Pump prices are showing no signs of letting up as we head into the 10th straight week of oil price hikes. Despite the tightening of global oil supply, the Energy Department says the war in Ukraine is unlikely to cause a global oil crisis. The country's ambassador to Saudi Arabia was ordered to return home after his wife openly and actively campaigned for a certain presidential candidate. And pressure mounts for Russian President Vladimir Putin as Ukraine continues to stand firm going into week 2 of the neighbor's invasion. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know to jumpstart your weekend. I'm Riza Diaz. Prices of petroleum products are expected to shoot up for the 10th straight week as global crude oil prices continue to soar amid the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Faith Del Mundo has the story.
Another week, another round of price increase on petroleum products. According to UniOil, the price of diesel may go up by to 5 pesos 50 centavos per liter, while gasoline may increase by up to 3 pesos and 50 centavos. This will be the 10th straight week of oil price hikes. The Energy Department is also expecting this but refused to provide an estimate for the increase.
Ayaw po natin ma-impluwensyahan ang magiging desisyon ng mga oil companies next week. But ang masasabi ko lang po namin dahil sa binibigay kong mga figure sa Dubai, crude price, nagiging subject tayo sa price taking, kung anong nangyayaring price sa international market ay naipapass on po dito sa domestic market.
Many have pointed out the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine as the reason for the oil price hikes. The DOE, however, said this is just one factor.
Wala pa pong actual sanction sa Russian oil export. But yet, naobserbahan na natin sa market yung pag-i-increase ng price. And definitely, klaro po ito na this is brought about by speculation in price.
Amid the tightened supply, the agency said there is still enough oil for the country.
Ang monitoring po natin as of February 28, sumusobra po ng average of 40 days.
The DOE held an emergency meeting to discuss discount programs and subsidy to help the transport sector. But for Manibela, there is already a need to increase the minimum fare to at least 12 pesos.
Ito ay konting hiling lang natin sa LTFRB na mapayagan at hinihingi natin yung pangunawa ng ating mga mahal na mananakay para makapagserbisyo tayo ng maayos dahil hindi na po namin talaga kinakaya yung taas ng presyo ng krudo.
In the meantime, the DOE makes sure that oil firms are complying with the minimum inventory requirements. Meanwhile, the National Economic and Development Authority said its restrictions could also help.
Malaking bagay po yung yung napunta na sa alert level 1, especially ang NCR at saka yung mga karatig na lugar. Ang gusto nga po namin mangyari is lahat na talaga na buong Pilipinas na mamalaga na sa alert level 1 kasi isa rin po talaga to sa makakatulong para ma-cushion natin yung impact nitong Ukraine crisis.
For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
The Energy Department is now preparing for a strategic petroleum reserve for priority sectors in case of a shortage. According to the department, the reserve can also be used to reach the country's minimum inventory requirement for fuel. Officials also had an emergency meeting with oil firms where they talked about Pantawid Pasada and the fuel discount for the Agriculture Department. Meanwhile, the National Economic Development Authority emphasized the need to open the economy to cushion the price hike on fuel and other commodities.
Binabantayan namin ng mabuti talaga yung kalakaran sa presyohan ng langis. Going forward, ang binabantayan talaga namin dito yung magiging sipa sa presyo ng mga pagkain.
Along with this, the Energy Department has laid out the worst possible scenario for the country in terms of its oil supply. Speaking in yesterday's Laging Handa briefing, Attorney Rino Abad of the DOE's Oil Industry Management Bureau explained that even if a Russian oil export reaches just around 5 million barrels per day out of a 100 million supply globally, they still don't expect any possible global crisis. Abad said the worst thing that the country could expect is a tightening of oil supply.
Ating supply po na worst case scenario ay umaabot lang ng Russian oil export of around 5 million barrels per day out of 100 million supply globally. So that's around 5%. So we would like to emphasize that with that magnitude, hindi po tayo nag-expect ng global crisis. But definitely, there will be a tightening of supply.
Here's an update on our national elections candidates. Presidential front-runner Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. visited Masbate to woo potential voters. He promised locals that he will revive the province's tourism industry, and although the Bicol region is known to be Vice President Leni Robredo's domain, its governor Antonio Co had earlier endorsed the BBM-Sara tandem. After a few hours in Masbate, Marcos Jr. left to attend a meeting of the Liga ng mga Barangay in Pasay City. Meanwhile, Marcos Jr.'s running mate, Sara Duterte, made rounds in Manila from the Golden Mosque in Quiapo to meeting with volunteer firefighters. Sara was joined by senatorial bets Herbert Bautista and Robin Padilla. Aksyon Demokratiko bet Isko Moreno made his way to Kalinga to meet with his supporters. During his visit, Moreno vowed to protect farmers, assuring them that he will scrutinize the rice importation scheme for their benefit. The Manila mayor likewise slammed the fellow bets who he said are using church groups for propaganda. Now, as for Vice President Leni Robredo, she and her running mate, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, were welcomed by 45,000-strong crowd during their visit to Malolos, Bulacan. There, Robredo also received the endorsement of Bulacan Governor Daniel Fernando, who said that Bulacanos should vote for a leader who would preserve democracy in the Philippines. The DFA has ordered the country's ambassador to Saudi Arabia to return home for office consultations. This after the envoy's wife was seen on a video campaigning for presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos Jr. In a statement, the DFA reminded its personnel that they are forbidden from campaigning or engaging in any partisan political activity. This is based on the Omnibus Election Code, the Overseas Voting Act of 2013, and a 2016 joint circular from the Civil Service Commission. A video has been circulating on social media showing Ambassador Andan Alton's wife campaigning for Marcos Jr. while speaking to a crowd in Riyadh. Now, the DFA is ramping up its repatriation efforts for Filipinos in Ukraine amid the ongoing Russian invasion. The agency confirmed that 21 Filipino crew members of MVS Breeze from Ukraine will be arriving in the country on Tuesday. The group was evacuated from the vessel that has been dry docked for repairs at a port of Odessa, Ukraine since January 27. Along with this, 13 out of the 31 crew members of Star Helena were able to cross the Moldova border on Friday. The crew were successfully evacuated from Kornomorsk and are waiting their repatriation to the Philippines. A week into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a former official of NATO dives deeper into the situation and the organization's role in the war. Let's watch this.
There's a lot of talk about whether the economic sanctions will be enough to, I guess, reverse some of what Putin is doing here. But there have been a lot of calls now for some degree of a military response, particularly from NATO. We've heard from NATO officials today on this Friday basically saying that they have no intention, at least right now, to enter into Ukrainian airspace or to put boots on the ground here. Do you think that that is a position that NATO can stand by?
I think the Secretary General Stoltenberg was right when he spoke after the foreign ministers meeting today. NATO's biggest responsibility right now is to stop this invasion in Ukraine from becoming a general war in Europe, from becoming World War III. Nobody wants to see that. It's in nobody's interest to do so. And so I think it is extraordinarily important for NATO to help the Ukrainians in every way it can, both on the military front and also on the humanitarian front, but not to put boots on the ground and not to implement a no-fly zone. So I do think that has to be the top strategic objective for NATO right now, to avoid World War III.
There's also, of course, concerns about the nuclear issue here. We saw, of course, footage of what appeared to be an attack by Russian forces on a nuclear facility in Ukraine. That, of course, alarmed a lot of folks about the security of some of those facilities. What can be done, if anything, to ensure the security of those facilities?
Well, the Russians certainly know nuclear power plants. They built those VVRs along with the Ukrainians during the Soviet era, so they know them well, they understand them well. What worries me is that they're not taking a very responsible stance now toward attacking civilian targets of all kinds, especially, a nuclear power plant. So we really did dodge a nuclear bullet last night, I think. But it is, I think, nevertheless important to not only pay attention at an international level. Rafael Grossi, the Secretary General of the IAEA, Director General, speaking to the UN Security Council this morning, keeping those controls in place at an international level to the degree possible, and certainly the attention of the world at an international level. But then second, I think to remind the Russians that, in fact, if there were a nuclear accident at that plant, it could impact Russian territory. It could result in radiation contamination of Russian territory. Do they really want to see that in their most fertile farmland down there in the south of Russia? I don't think so. So it's in their interest to ensure also that this plant remains safe and secure and does not get attacked.
Draw on your experience here. When people start talking about a new Cold War, is that overstated?
Well, there's a big difference from the Cold War. We were really cut off from each other during the Cold War in so many ways. The communications that led to the lack of communications that led to the Cuban Missile Crisis 60 years ago this year, ironically, actually, it's much different now. We have many, many lines of communication open with Russia. You've seen Chancellor Scholz and President Macron calling Putin in the last couple of days. We will stay in touch. We will continue. I think that gives us an opportunity for some intensified diplomacy and efforts to stop this terrible invasion. So if there's a ray of light and hope here, it's that this is not the Cold War.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later again at 9 in the morning as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now, www.signalplay.com, and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.